It was a quiet morning in May 1968, just outside Georgetown, Kentucky. Wilbur Riddle, a local man, was driving along US Highway 25, heading north. He wasn't looking for anything unusual, but something caught his eye. Off the side of the road, near a patch of woods, there was a green tarpaulin, the kind used for tents. It was wrapped tightly around something, and it didn't look like it belonged there. Wilbur stopped his car and walked over. He pulled back the tarp and saw what was inside. It was the body of a young woman, wrapped up and left in the woods. She was unclothed, except for a small piece of white cloth on her shoulder, which looked like part of a baby's diaper. Her body was badly decomposed, and it was clear she had been dead for some time. Wilbur called the police right away. When the police arrived, they found that the woman had been strangled. There were signs of blunt force trauma to her head, and it looked like she had struggled before she died. They took her body to the morgue, but there was no identification. No wallet, no jewelry, nothing that could tell them who she was. All they had was the tarp, which is why she became known as Tent Girl. The police tried to identify her. They took fingerprints and dental records, but nothing matched. They checked missing persons reports, but no one had reported a woman missing who fit her description. The case went cold. The police buried her in a local cemetery under the name Tent Girl, with a simple gravestone that showed her likeness. For years, the case stayed open, but no leads came in. The police didn't know who she was, and they didn't know who killed her. The only thing they knew for sure was that she was a young woman, probably in her early 20s, and she had been murdered. In the 1990s, a man named Todd Matthews became interested in the case. Todd wasn't a detective or a police officer. He was just a regular guy who had a personal connection to the story. His wife's father was Wilbur Riddle, the man who had found Tent Girl's body. Todd had heard about the case from his father-in-law, and he couldn't stop thinking about it. He wanted to know who Tent Girl was. Todd started doing his own research. He looked through old newspapers, police reports, and missing persons files. He found a report from 1967 about a woman named Barbara Ann Hackman Taylor, who had gone missing from Lexington, Kentucky. Barbara was about the same age as Tent Girl, and her description matched. Todd thought this might be her. He contacted the police and asked them to compare Barbara's dental records with Tent Girl's. The police did the comparison, and it was a match. Tent Girl was Barbara Ann Hackman Taylor. Barbara had disappeared in late 1967. She was married to a man named George Earl Taylor, who worked at a carnival. George had told people that Barbara had left him and run off with another man, but he never filed a missing persons report. He died in 1987, so he was never questioned about her disappearance. The police exhumed Barbara's body and did a DNA test to confirm her identity. The test proved that Tent Girl was Barbara Ann Hackman Taylor. After nearly 30 years, she finally had a name. Once Barbara's identity was confirmed, the police reopened the case. They wanted to find out who killed her. They looked into George Taylor's background, but he was already dead. They also looked into other possible suspects, but there was no evidence that anyone else was involved. The police found that Barbara and George had a troubled marriage. George was known to be violent, and there were reports that he had abused Barbara. But without George alive to question, there was no way to prove he was responsible. The police also looked into Barbara's life before she disappeared. She was a young woman who had grown up in Kentucky. She had a daughter, and she was trying to build a life for herself. But her marriage to George was difficult, and she had talked about leaving him. There was no evidence that Barbara had run off with another man. In fact, all the evidence pointed to the fact that she had been murdered. The police believed that George Taylor was the most likely suspect, but they could never prove it.